What's up, everybody? Welcome to the newest episode of Demo Day, the podcast for entrepreneurs and venture capitalists, where we demystify the culture of joining one of the top accelerator, incubator, or VC programs from around the world. I'm your host, Sean Goldfaden, CEO of Coefficient Labs, and on today's show, we'll be interviewing Brandon Maier, founder and managing partner at LvlUp Ventures. Brandon brings a wealth of experience in venture as a former founding partner at Quaker. Brandon also knows what it takes for early stage startups to rise through the ranks. He runs a monthly event series called LA Venture Connect, as well as Founder Shop, and is best known for helping pre-seed and seed stage startups develop their business and marketing strategies. On today's show, we'll talk about the importance of living unique experiences and how these experiences can make you a more compelling person. We talk about why traction is the single KPI that Brandon cares about when investing in new startups, and also the importance of building relationships and a real network as the biggest goal that all first-time founders should have. Oh, one more thing. If you are listening to the Demo Day podcast on Apple Podcast or Spotify, or if you're watching the podcast on the Coefficient Labs website, head over to Apple Podcast and leave Demo Day a review. Coefficient Labs is giving away two $10,000 growth hacking packages to one VC and one founder or entrepreneur that leaves us a review on the Apple Podcast. Without further ado, let's get into Demo Day. Brandon, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Demo Day.
Appreciate you guys having me and being here today.
Awesome. So we are really excited to learn more about, your journey and Westwave and what you're excited about in general in the community here. I think we always like to get an understanding from the VCs that we have on the show. What is it about this industry that you're passionate about, and why is VC something that you choose to do your time with?
So I think one of the biggest, things that I'm passionate about within this industry is that it's so amazing if you kind of look, over the last like 10 years with everybody, not just accepting the status quo. There's nothing wrong with, waking up in the morning, going to your, corporate job or anything like that. But now people have the ability to create and affect change in the world. So it's really exciting to kind of, find the right change makers out there and be able to, have a hand in what they're doing.
Now, there are so many VCs that have come up through a finance background. There's others that have come up as a founder that then transitioned to become a VC. What's your story? Meaning, have you always been interested in venture capital, or were you someone that started as an entrepreneur and made your transition over?
I very much started as an entrepreneur. I never had it in my mind that I would ever do venture capital. But, I think one of the exciting things after the last fund that I started is we were doing an accelerator, and it's like you get to work with all of these different companies. So everything on a daily basis is different. So if I'm going to go jump in a strategy session with a fintech company or a company that's doing blockchain or a marketplace, it's your days are constantly changing. And for me, and I guess my personality type, that's something that I really like, is the constant evolution of change.
Now, many of our listeners listen to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, but we do film. And so anyone that's never checked out the actual video version, it's my favorite aspect of the show. Right now, Brandon is sitting across from me rocking an LA Dodgers hat. And so my next question is, are you an LA, native? Is the team someone that you've come to love, or where were you born and where'd you grow up?
Yeah, so it's kind of a hodgepodge per se. I was born in Michigan, and I've lived. I'd say that's kind of a split between my life between LA, Michigan, and New York. With New York having the the most of it through college and working out there.
And what did you do for fun as a kid?
As for fun as a kid, loved video games. I'm actually avid NBA 2K player. So
Ooh, NBA Jam maybe, like even more?
I actually the best things, like, with the systems now is like I have even NBA Jam on my Xbox One.
So last night we had a buddy of the team here that came and brought his Nintendo Switch, and he had one of those kind of starter pack games where you can play all of the old games, and we were playing Kirby's Dream Course, the golf game from. Oh my gosh! So big time gamer, and what about sports or
sports? Big time sports. So like as a kid, I remember I was in second grade, and I probably wasn't the best little league player, and I think that was my first entrepreneurial experience. As I actually started my own little league, equipped with like full on stats, like kids doing like a draft and everything, keeping standings.
How old were you when this happened?
I was in second grade.
Second grade.
Yeah.
What was that? Was there someone in your life, whether it be a family member or a mentor, that was kind of pushing you to do something, or did you just have something inside
you?
No,
I think, kind of, I'm an only child.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that as an only child, you have a very creative mind, especially when you don't have, kids at your fingertips to just go out and play all the time. I think you really kind of learn to have a very like creative, outside of the box mind and imagination. That just it was something naturally that like spoke to me, as always trying to lead things and head them up, as opposed to kind of sitting in the back of the audience and just doing what I'm told.
Do you remember what it felt like for you once you got the first was it a little league? Like, what
so it was like let's say it was not a completely like super well organized. Like there was a schedule. There was like a weekend schedule, and it's no one's parents involved. It was kids just kind of staying to. This is the way this is organized. And I, for whatever reason, the weirdest thing I think I loved about sports was I was enamored with statistics.
Data.
So yeah, I wouldn't always like watch all the games. Like when I was a really little kid, it was me like combing through newspapers and seeing all the statistics, whether it's like a baseball season, a basketball season, or a football season. And then, same thing, like getting online, like I still obsessively look through my phone. When I get the few minutes here and there, I'm on like ESPN if I'm not in my email.
What do you think it is about data that's so important? I mean, the most intellectual leaders, the top leaders, whether they come from creative backgrounds like myself at Coefficient, or they come from more of a, statistical or whatever the background might be. What is the importance of data?
Well, data, the crazy thing with data, especially when you start looking at how much it's been used in professional sports as of late, is there's a whole nother like underlying story there of things that you don't necessarily see on the surface. So, even kind of just, again, using that athlete example, is you take athletes that, are playing professional sports today. Now data is, more so than it used to be with scouts. Like you or me, like having a better eye than, the person filming, or, any other person, like, oh, this guy's got the best eye for it. Now you can sell through those data and statistics. Like, no, there's really been a drop off in how, let's say, Albert Pujols is hitting right-handed hitters at his 39 season, statistically from 40% from his 38 season.
I mean, I think that it's never more clear than when you look at like sports gambling and how close these the people that set the lines are able to predict, and it's all through data and running models.
But you might look at like, say, a swing in that, and there hasn't been so much that has changed that you can, with the naked eye, that you can actually like see like. Obviously, something's telling you they've lost a step, but I think that as even sports science gets better, and again tied into data, is that we'll start kind of seeing more thoroughly, within the near future of how people's bodies work, and like, is this something, are you at this age getting a decreased, blood flow and, your calf muscles, whatever it might be.
So sports is a big part of your life. You found yourself being imaginative and entrepreneurial at a very young age. What would your teachers say about you? How would others kind of describe you back in the early days?
I didn't talk.
Really?
So probably not a lot. I actually, I remember I had to have my mom come in because someone gave me a satisfactory. I had all outstanding citizenships because I didn't talk, and someone gave me a satisfactory because I'm like, this doesn't go with my all A's and everything else.
I was like, needs improvement.
And this teacher had it, she broke down that, well, I want you to talk. I want you to engage and say, I'm like, no, kids are cruel. Like, I'm not really going to put myself out there and have people, bully me.
Interesting. And which is kind of unique from coming from internally.
I got that changed, by the way.
Right. Yeah. I can tell. So you very part of, kind of building your own curiosity around business. At what point did you know you wanted to go to college? Did you have a college you had in mind that you wanted to go to?
Yeah. So I initially, there were a couple schools that I keyed in growing up. It was initially I wanted to go to USC, and then I saw reruns of this show Felicity, and I decided NYU looked in New York. It looks really cool. I'm like, yo, that sounds cool. This person wanted to go to school in California, and a weird way to pick a school, but it was
a TV show.
It was a TV show, but it didn't make a definitive decision. I still went and saw the school and stuff, and I remember showing up in New York in the dead of winter, freezing, and you don't warm up cars or anything out there. I'm like, oh my God, I'm stuck in this snowstorm. But it still seemed like just a great idea. It was so different from every other place because NYU is not a normal set campus. You're in the city. So I think for a lot of people, just probably the same way I think it happens with Los Angeles, is a lot of people you'll go there and within 6 months to a year, you'll see if you're actually cut out to stay there.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you go to NYU with a plan of what you wanted to accomplish, or was it just
I had 6 different internships. I was honestly trying, anything and everything. I always thought I was scared of doing it, but I always thought that it would end up somehow in entertainment. But I also just saw with a lot of people that would do that. I remember actually going I think it was maybe my first month at NYU, and I went down to the seaport to Abercrombie and Fitch actually at the time, and I went the girl behind that, she's like, oh, where do you go to school? I was like, oh, I would go to NYU. She's like, I graduated from NYU. I was like, where'd you go to school? She's like, I went to Tisch. I'm an actress. I was like, shit. I'm like, I don't think that's what I'm thinking in my head. I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this, or that I'm specifically
I'm not cut out for this.
Yeah, no, it takes it just like being an entrepreneur, or any industry, it takes a very certain person who can go, through those pitfalls and, find the find the positives and all the negatives to, come out on the other side of it.
Yeah, you learn that just because people have specific skill sets doesn't mean that they're necessarily built for the context or the environment that they're going to. I know we're right now growing our sales team, and just knowing that there are certain people that just smile and dial call hundreds of people that might not work in this sort of environment. And similar, you may have all these skills to be in entertainment, but once you look at the environment, it's not really built for your mindset.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the point of anybody that's going to do an internship or an apprenticeship, just something to kind of either confirm what they've always believed that this industry is this, certain way that they've played out in their head, or to see what it's really like, and if it's something that, they see themselves doing for the next, many years to come.
Yeah, I think you make a great point, which is, I'm speaking for others. This is, I guess, just my opinion, but you sort of find that, people that are either in college or just graduating, they're in their young 20s, mid 20s, and they say to themselves, like, I have to have it all figured out right now. I've got this one job, this one internship, whatever this industry is, it has to be the singular thing. But really the truth is that this is the time to explore what you love, what you don't love, the people you like to work with, the responsibility. And, I think to what you're saying here, you can explore more. You don't have to be so hard.
Absolutely. Like, honestly, I wish that, to a certain extent, that I would have been that person to like explore and be like, I'm going to take off to Europe for a year.
Meaning you did not do that?
No.
What was holding you back at the time?
Well, personally, I wasn't like one of those people that was at NYU that came from a ton of money. So, I came out with a lot of student loan debt, and I had to be very conscious of, just jumping into real life. And so if that were an opportunity, I don't know, just based off of my mindset, that I would have done it. But it's one of those things, and with hindsight, like it's very much the time to explore. It's very much the time to kind of, make mistakes, try the job that you don't know if you're going to like it or not, like give it a chance. Take other risks. You have some time to like really figure it out. And the more life everybody lives, just all of those experiences coupled together, it just makes for a more full individual.
Could not agree with you more. Now, when you were at NYU, was there a point when you were at school where you thought to yourself, you know what, like I want to start my own thing, or were you pressured by the realities of life and you had to start working at a company first?
I had to start like working like at first, but it ended up kind of turning into something cool down the line through just the connections that you end up making in New York. So,
what was your first job out of school?
So during school, while I was also interning, I was doing nightlife. I was like a college promoter,
making it happen.
Yeah,
getting the good times going.
My biggest like college party in college. We did some bar. You'd walk around the city and find bars that might be struggling, so that you can go, convince them to take on this type of risk. 18 to get in, 21 to drink, et cetera, which does not work. Period. But we made $6,000 in cash. And I was like, this is awesome. So
the imagination started going.
Yeah, and I had a friend who was opening up a place in New York City. Like his family had come into some money and stuff, and he had a partner who was like a small investor in the company, and I eventually went into working with that guy who had BitInstant in the early days of Bitcoin.
Okay.
So, which was backed by the Winklevoss twins.
And now, once you got into your first capacity working in a startup, were you running the business? What capacity?
I was a financial controller.
Financial controller. Okay.
Love working with numbers.
Yeah. And was it at that place that you then thought to yourself that you want to start your own business? At what point did you transition to entrepreneurship?
Yeah. We actually, my business partner in this now, we both actually work there. He's on the development side, and I'm on the finance side. And as it was kind of coming to a head and a close, because it was in the early days of Bitcoin when people were actually allowed to do transactions, purchase Bitcoin, whatnot. Once the kind of, same thing with the like drug industry is like once the government came in and kind of looked
Regulated
at
it.
looking at through regulations, it's first you kind of go through different series as they're going through regulations where they basically made it that it was a money service business account. Money service business accounts are typically associated with check cashing places. They're high risk. Anybody not everybody knew what Bitcoin or cryptocurrency was at the time. So
What year are we talking about?
This is back in 2013, 2014.
Wow. Were you like when you were going out to parties or networking events, just talking to whomever, were you kind of one of the earlier people telling your friends about Bitcoin and crypto?
I was because we were that venue my friend opened. We were the very first people to accept cryptocurrency at any sort of like store or purchase for a service, and so that was the early days of BitPay, which would allow a place to basically like they would hold the transaction. It automatically like once the transaction like went through, you're not running the risk that oh my God it went from 120 down to 60. Within minutes. BitPay is running that risk, but they're also, to their point, like we're talking 60 and 120, and you look at it where it's now, I don't know how much they held, but they stood to make a lot of money.
And how did this transition from crypto and working with a couple of your friends and colleagues? How did that transition to Quake? Because Quake is such a staple of, the LA community. And I know that there's New York is a heavy location, but we've had Anthony Kalani on the show before. And how did you get involved with Quaker, get that started?
Yeah. So after BitInstant, along with my best friend AJ, who was also part of the company, we got together with another one of the developers from the team, and I had an idea to start our first startup. And so we started an HR ed tech company called Jazzy, which was a student job matching platform. And
how did you get in? Did you see a problem or something?
So it was, I saw a problem a little too late. The way I was kind of looking at it from the BitInstant standpoint is that we were bringing a lot of people in that we had hired collegiate developers through a service called like dice.com, which is...
Yeah, I remember Dice.
Yeah, so when I was combing through the numbers, there was so much money spent through Dice, and I'm like, I could have got these college developers from NYU, and you could have structured it differently. You had kind of customer service people, and when you're running out of money and stuff, I was like, you have to make pivots. You need to cut if you're running out and you don't, and it's like you have 2-3 months, you've got to make adjustments. And so there are different positions and things that I felt, even at a startup, that could be filled by college students, people that were eager to learn. And we were actually creating this at the same time as a company that's actually raised a lot of money called LvlUp. They were coming out as campus jobs. And we came out at the same time. We raised like $500,000. They raised $850,000. Then is like the next thing they got into Y Combinator. We were we got free space at the NYU entrepreneurship lab that they had just opened up. It was they got a huge investment from Mark Leslie, who's a professor at Stanford, and opened up this amazing lab where there used to be a NYU computer store, and we had free space in there. So we went through their accelerator program. I met one of my future partners for Quake, a guy by the name Chad Burgess, who was interning for the Stern Business School family office at the time while he was finishing up his MBA. A couple of the family office guys from there end up being our main investors, and they had our partner Glenn. They were friends with him and had recently gone to the Stanford X event to see their pitches. And Glenn is this amazing like entrepreneur that had started 14 companies, had 8 exits, 3 IPOs. including a big IPO with the very first digital banner ads.
Did you say, I'm sorry, Glenn, what was his name again?
Glenn?
Glenn, yeah. When you look at Glenn as someone that has so much success, is there any specific traits about him that you find to be especially admirable, or things that you really look up to when it comes to his skill set?
I think you kind of can see in a lot of the people that are really successful as their demeanor. You would never know that this person had all of that success, or easy to talk to. They don't think that they're right about every single thing. I think that as a founder too, you just have to have a certain level of like humility, but at the same time, you got to keep going and keep
the confidence
pushing.
and the humility and the energy.
It's like confidence coupled with like a certain calmness.
Yeah.
Like nothing can blow you over or ruin your day. You just keep going. What
keep it here.
What is your other option? It's just like when people get upset or pissed off because I had another colleague actually at Quake that this would be a great example. Guy Lucas Poles, who's out here in LA.
Yeah.
Lucas dropped his MacBook Pro one day on the ground, and I'm just like, he's like, oh shit, let's see, hopefully this works. Just like the calmest, like most normal experience ever. It's not like, oh my God, my computer, like, what am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Like, anything. Because again, what is that going to solve?
Yeah. You're unable to make a move or to accept criticism when you're in this tense state of fear, anxiousness, right?
There's a potential problem. So you're getting worried about a potential problem that, again, we don't know if it's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't checked.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a very little time like within that. And it's like, okay, if it's 5 minutes, just then check, take that 5 minutes. Don't react right now. Then there's establishing it's fine, so we can stay calm, or it's not fine, so how do we solve that problem?
And now, when was Quake creator? How did that? What was the culmination of that?
So the three of us got together and kind of formed that partnership. Glenn was out in Seattle, so we were kind of all, working remotely with Chad and I in New York, and we were working out of the NYU Student Service Center for about 8 months, perched up in there, bringing on a couple interns while we were raising money, and like, what else, can we do besides, get applicants and stuff. Like, I created a pitch series that they still have called the University Investor Series, where initially for Quake, our thought process was that we were going to focus at the collegiate level, like, companies coming out of the collegiate ecosystem, because they had all the proper tools and resources to succeed within this ecosystem. Mm-hmm. Just the common place where a lot of those companies might be lacking is on the practical experience. But it all depends on the the business that's being created.
Sure.
But we were going to initially focus there, so it was a way to have I created the series, and it was a way to have a hand in the college market while not solely focused there. Still kind of getting, instead of only focusing there, just getting the best that was coming from that ecosystem. Because as an accelerator too, you might not always, you're not necessarily getting, the Mark Zuckerbergs, and you're trying to basically look for kind of who's next.
Why do you think that there's a reason that maybe some of the certain people are not the right fit for an accelerator? Or why would, when you say that, Mark Zuckerbergs aren't going to an accelerator,
that would be a bad example. Let's just say, like, if you had a ton of like past success as a founder, you've had the, a $500 million exit, like, They're very much so, companies that go through accelerator programs where the founders have exits and stuff. It just might be at a different level. It all depends kind of across the board.
Interesting. Now,
But it depends on their level of education too. For in a lot of ways, outside of the network, an accelerator outside of the network is providing, a level of education and expertise.
Now, for the original thesis that Quake was, first wanting to kind of be the bridge between college students and some of these early stage startups, were there any specific traits or qualities that you guys were looking for in the founders? It could be back then and also even today. What do you look for?
We were. The biggest thing I'd say that kind of push at Quake is traction, to really see kind of upward momentum with the companies, just because there's a lot of there's so many startups being created every single day that it's so much harder. And this is something I see a lot in the LA ecosystem. It's like so many people are trying to pitch an idea, or they're trying to pitch. We built this platform, but there's not really a whole lot
for it.
No one's paying for it. There's not a whole lot of people using it. So you're kind of missing that validation for the product market fit, and they need some sort of upward momentum. Like, you can put so much basis on the team, but I do believe that team at this point in pre-seed and seed is the most important thing, because for a lot of people, they, especially if it's like a consumer product, a lot of people, they can get that company to 50K MRR,
mm-hmm.
but can they get it to the next stage to 100K? Can they raise a Series A round? There's just so many different moving pieces in doing a startup, which is why, even when you're finding a co-founder and you're finding additional team members, surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. You will go. That is something that I learned from Glenn. He's like, you surround yourself with people that are smarter than you,
better than you in certain areas. You're the whether it's the sum of the 5 people you surround. But if you surround yourself with people that are better than you in these areas, they're gonna whether it's tennis or business or whatever, right? You're gonna get better. When you invest in a founder, are there any attributes that they can do that perhaps are immediate red flags? Or are there any things that people do that immediately say to yourself, this is not the right fit for me?
I think there are a few things. One of the first pieces is kind of, when you're talking to a founder, is seeing what the level of, I guess, not openness. I'm trying to think of the right word here. Are they able to be moldable? Are they able to,
how set in their ways are they?
Exactly. Some for certain people, it's like, hey, if I tell you at this stage, valuation's very much in the eye of the beholder. You might come out here with your pre-traction company at a $10 million valuation and talk to 200 investors, but then one person says, yes, I will invest at that, and you're a $10 million valuation. It might not be the best thing for you to do, because you might face a down round down the line. You might not be able to raise anything else outside of them, but at some point, someone will come and take that. But if you have conversations, if you're so married to each and every part of your business, be adaptable to change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the things that I look for is does this person seem like they're going to be extremely hard to work with? They're super stubborn. Do they really, when you get into the granularity of questions about the business, do they know that inside and out? And then my biggest piece is, and I remember doing this for Quake when we would interview companies, is but this was a different animal because you did do demo day. I was like, can I picture this person up on stage pitching this company and people just being wowed? They want it and everybody else wants it. So when I talk to companies, even now, it's can this person get in front of an investor. And it's just like, it's like that guy that before we started the podcast that rented you guys this space, you're like, this dude walked in and it was like, this guy's a boss.
Yeah.
Like, are you gonna feel that? Is the team, across the board, is like, you start looking at the intangibles. Like, you might have a brilliant company. Does anybody in this team look like they can sell anything?
When you, as someone that's been involved not only in your own demo days, but in the community, you're I've seen you at them. What do you look for in the demo day pitches that truly wow people?
Well, I'm not checking out demo days nowadays, but
how come?
Well, I started Westwave, so I'll just say really quick with Westwave, we're actually switching on Monday. The name changes over to LvlUp Ventures. So we have a presence in my partners in New York City, so I didn't want something that seemed too West Coast.
Okay,
so
okay.
I'll just put that out there. But everything will still redirect from Westwave.
LvlUp. All right, cool.
But yeah, I wouldn't say like demo days are necessarily, like, even with pitch events, they're not necessarily where you're searching, like I'd say for pitch events. Like you find companies that here or there that might wow you, and it's worth having an additional like conversation. But I don't necessarily want to just see them like on a stage like this is a performance piece. One of the things that I don't like with some of the constructs of the current like industry is that it's very much a dog and pony show to get money. There are companies out there that might not have a beautiful deck, and building a deck might not be their thing, and they can build an amazing business. But you have to, and at the end of the day, you have to kind of just have everything tightened up and completely together. And that's one of the things that will end up helping companies with like our current fund and business is, making sure that everything's put together correctly. Your data room's ready to go. Yeah, you don't necessarily need this, pre-seed and, here and there for seed, depending on what type of business you have. But again, you want these things to be in order as you get down the line, and things get crazier and crazier, and you don't have all this time to backtrack. But I'd rather see them in more of their natural element. Which
seems to be almost every VC we bring on the show and ask them about demo day, it's almost a unanimous.
No one cuts checks in the rooms anymore. Like it ends up being something that you do as what I call the checks and balances of branding.
Explain a little more for us.
So the way that I associate kind of like checks and balances of businesses. So if you have the right marketing money and say you're a company, why would you pay and do this event? Because for 3 seconds or whatever, I was a random person walked in that room and I saw that Roomy banner, and 6 months later I jumped on the Roomy app. Did you see all the direct conversion and there's from statistics around that? No, but this would be part of your marketing budget and ways to kind of your checks and balances of being seen. So like, the checks and balances, as it would kind of pertain. I kind of lost my place for a second.
I think that you were referring to the fact that within demo day.
Yeah. So checks and balances, like everybody does demo day. So are you going to be the one that stops doing it? Mm-hmm. Like there are certain groups I know that have gone towards like, this is our digital like demo day, or they're not doing it as big or spending as much money because again, checks aren't getting like cut. So are you going to go and drop $50,000 on an event to display companies and say there's not a lot of serious investors in the room and it's just kind of the community?
Yeah. It is something interesting because do you think...
what are the things that affect your bottom line when you look at where you can spend money and what you can do with it and where you can get even say some of these companies?
Do you think that the problem, and I don't even know if it's a problem, but do you think when companies have a problem with traction, they're coming to meet you for the very first time and you're really looking, you're someone that doesn't care as much about their demo day pitch and more about their traction and what they're doing. When they don't have the traction that you want to see, is it usually in relation to their marketing and their branding, their acquisition, or is it the fact that they just don't have a solution to a problem that needs to be solved?
So I'm trying to think of how to say this. Nothing that I'm saying right now, I guess for the audience, is supposed to come off negative. But if someone's coming to you pre-traction and it's without solid reason, like let's say
developing a medical technology or something.
That's different.
Right.
Again, if it's without the specific reason, like we're a marketplace and we built a platform, like
where's your users?
Well, no, I'm worried about that founder because they don't. To me, that means they don't get it unless they're coming to me and it's like, listen, I built this company or that company in the past, like something like I know, or it was super successful. Usually they know that they're probably sinking some of their own money to get it off the ground and scale the valuation. They're not coming pre-traction and be like, hey, this is $10 million valuation, my past success, and like let's go with this. Like they've got that money to do that and to bet on themselves. So to me, one that kind of tells me that they're a little bit of lost in terms of the relationship of like an investor and business, and how like where they need the things that they need to have together and where they need to be as a company to make that conversation that much more meaningful. Like I always tell pre-seed companies, especially if this is their first time out, you are in a great position right now. You are in the position to go out there and actually build relationships, to not look at this investor like a check and be like, oh, hey, your name's, Steven, whatever. Like, it's nice to meet you. I love to grab, coffee. Like, we've been building this. I'm not looking for, checks or anything right now, but, I'd love to, pick your brain or get your 2 cents. Like something where it just doesn't seem like you're being bombarded.
Yeah.
And that would be another thing in terms of approaching the conversation. When people do go to a pitch event and it's like you have a panel of VC judges or angels, or speakers, is they'll get like crowded by the stage, and the first thing for a lot of people is just like, I'm building this company. I'm like, what's your name? How are you doing? Like.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's this is a great opportunity, because I think there are so many people that are listening to this show that say, I go to 2 to 3 networking events a week or a month. I am that guy or gal. I'm the person waiting. What am I supposed to do, Brandon? I've been waiting 2 hours to talk to these people and I finally get my shot. What would you recommend to them that might set them up for better success?
So I have a networking rule where I don't spend more than typically like 2 to 5 minutes in a conversation.
Interesting. How come? Or what was the thought process behind it?
It's so, well, you again, you look at opportunity cost and statistics. So especially in Los Angeles, if I'm going to take 45 minutes to drive out to Santa Monica, and let's say the drive home's about, an hour and 15 minutes, and, there's 2 hours right there, and the event's 3 hours. Like, if I'm only going to talk to 2 people, how is that worth it? Even, and everybody needs like a little bit of break. Like that might have been your hour time that you just gave up.
Yeah. And
to have like 2 conversations. So it's like working a room that way. If you have a brief conversation, like, hey, I'd love to talk to you and catch up more. I'm going to shoot you do you have a card? I'm going to shoot you an email tomorrow. And I have the same, I'm going to give away, I have boilerplates, like just down like a row on my notepad on my Mac. And I have like an event boilerplate. And it's like, it could say, let's say, USC Viterbi event follow-up. And hi, Megan, it was great meeting you last night. Like
that way, push it off the meeting. Get out of the event.
Get out of the conversation. You can kind of like thoroughly like, look through all the cards and everything that you collected, or you can mark something. Everybody has their own process. So if there's a better process that works, like why not good at remembering people, so I'm not going to know who this card belongs to or that card. Like it depends on what your purpose of going to the event is. Like for some people, it can be twofold. Like if you're doing a marketplace, it might be like, here's potential future users, here's potential channel partners, here's conversations with investors that I'd rather than bombarding this person, I'd rather shoot a casual like email tomorrow.
That's such a great point. I think like I always tell my team whenever they go to the event that there's kind of this like imaginary 24-hour rule, which is you essentially have 24 hours after an event to send an outreach to anyone you met at that event, because there's almost like this unsaid, like I always go like a handshake agreement that's like, you got off your ass on a Tuesday night from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. I got off my ass. We both showed up at the event. That gives us the 24 hours.
You think in the chaos of any event, though, there's just like not a lot that's
transactionally happening.
Yeah, that's typically going to happen. Like, yes, there's always that chance that you spent like an hour like with this one person. It was the best conversation of your life, and it goes swimmingly. But again, when you look at your true kind of like opportunity cost and what the things that you need to be doing, there's other things that can be accomplished there, and you can probably open up to a lot more conversations.
And I want to add one more thing to this, and then we can move on, which is know your audience. Like you're saying, know your goal audience. Because I think sometimes people may be wanting to go and talk to a specific VC, but because they're afraid of getting turned down or asking for that card, they'll go and talk to 20 other people, or all of these meetings with people that aren't going to be helping their business or aren't going to help them move towards their goal. And so just knowing who you want to talk to and what angle you want to go before going in will be such a better use of that time.
Absolutely.
Now, Quake was a big part of your life. You decided to move from New York to LA to kind of transition. What was going through your head, and why did you choose LA?
Oh, I mean, we built Quake out of NYU, and then we did our first few programs in downtown FiDi Financial District in Manhattan. And we were expanding. We were opening up Los Angeles, which was to be followed by Austin, Texas. And I've lived out here in the past. I also, during my startup, I actually had 3 Airbnbs in Hollywood.
Okay. You seem like someone that's always been able to keep passive income streams going.
Yes. So, I very much wanted to be back out here. We did a kind of a detailed area analysis, looking at where it would be appropriate to put the office, where it'd be, I guess, with a lot of people coming from outside of typically those cities that you launch in, a lot of people coming from outside of that ecosystem, from different cities and states. Want to make sure that it was affordable to founders and everything. So we saw a big growth in DTLA initially, which is why we first went out there before I left. We had decided, and I had moved the office out here to Santa Monica, just because there, it was, especially for an accelerator program, it's definitely a prevalent area.
Yeah.
Where there's a lot going on, and the startup ecosystem. But for me, and then launching the new fund, I like DTLA. There's definitely something that's kind of been brewing. And
what's brewing? What's brewing right now? What's going on in LA?
In DTLA?
I mean, what's even more interesting is that it's kind of segmenting, right? Like you're talking about Santa Monica, DT, they're almost starting to create their own.
But don't you feel like it's always been segmented to a certain standpoint? If you live where I've lived in the past is majority out here is Sherman Oaks, and I wouldn't leave Sherman Oaks. I'd be in Sherman Oaks and I'd be in Studio City, and maybe sometimes pop into Hollywood, but I feel like you don't go to all these other areas. During the week, I drive. So this is a beautiful thing. I drive maybe once or twice a week. So you actually pulled me into a reality.
Yes.
I'm like,
I know we're doing something right.
I'm like, oh crap! I got to get behind a
wheel.
My car. Yeah. Okay. so I think you kind of get it depends on what what you do, but for me at least, it's like kind of getting stuck a little bit in that area. But I also live down there, and kind of the live work close, because you start thinking of quality of life, and living in traffic in Los Angeles. It gets crazy, but in terms of being here and stuff, I very much wanted to be back. To me, like, New York is one of the most amazing places in the world. But like, in terms of, kind of, I guess, growing up, getting older, and being able to just do more than work, eat and kind of have like that food and like nightlife that, New York provides. LA just provides all of these different landscapes to, get out into nature and go hiking and, go to the ocean for 3 hours after this and kill time.
Yeah.
To make sure there's no traffic. But it has that, just different landscape. And the other cool thing too is, because there's so much going on in LA in terms of the different kind of industries and everything that people do, you don't get just stuck in this being like a place where it's just startup.
Yeah.
Like, it just
creative
provides,
and art and acting and so many different.
you have freelancers. Like, I can actually go to places and people have no idea what I do, and it's awesome.
Yeah. That is unlike San Francisco, where it's such a tech ecosystem that there's really it's like just one giant.
And that's
pool.
but that's it depends on what you'd want as an individual. Like, that's very much the world that a lot of people want to live in. They want to eat, sleep, drink, breathe,
Tech.
do everything.
Yeah.
And that's perfect, a perfect place for them.
Now, what was missing in the ecosystem that made you want to start your newest fund? And can you remind the audience again of what it's called?
So it's LvlUp Ventures.
LvlUp Ventures. So what was missing in the market that made you want to start a new fund?
So one of the things that I had kind of seen, again, with the like accelerator programs that are out there, and just kind of looking at that general model. It's been around for close to 15 years, with starting with Y Combinator. That as it's evolved with startups and the just abundance of them coming out nowadays, and this expanding from state to state, people are always looking for the network. And as funds, there's so many funds that are popping up. So even as funds, you have competition inadvertently. Like, everybody wants the best companies. So what we wanted to build, without kind of going and giving too much away, is a way to mitigate that risk and be able to really accelerate those capital raises, so that we weren't at the end of like our virtual program that we're going to be putting on next year, we weren't like holding on to companies, and also making it like virtual and not following the class structures. Like, we're looking at this as post acceleration. So it's like, if you have at least 25% of your round filled, we can expedite this process in 3 to 4 months if you're raising under $2.5 million, and we have a special way in which we do this.
So who would be people listening to this right now that so do you have to live in LA to be a part of your fund?
No. I would say that we're primarily focused on companies that are in the U.S. or have a U.S. Market presence. But we're primarily looking to source from other seed funds and accelerator programs that might have made these investments within the past 6 months. A minimum of 25% of the current round is filled. We'll add an additional 150 to 250K to that existing round. And
no vertical specific, just
no vertical specific. We have I'd say there's 4 to 5 that we won't touch. And that's just because it's either like capital intensive, or they're it's a
Markets
really,
you just haven't worked for you in the past.
yeah, like a really long line to an exit. Market potential.
Who would like the perfect type of company be for you?
Perfect type of company would be, looking at a company that's in an emerging space that, as a founder, that's had past like success, because after we help and get through that kind of raise process and focus in on really kind of accelerating their growth while we're focused on the capital raise. We want to, make sure that after they leave us, that they're going to be, okay, like as they're kind of left to their own devices. Because I think one of the things that gets really hard when doing an accelerator is your portfolio continues to grow, and so your bandwidth continues to shrink, and it's hard when you're, working with. Sometimes when you have founders that need a little bit more help to, extend that additional bandwidth.
Wow, this has been one of our best podcasts. I really do appreciate, Brandon, you coming down here, man. And I did just want to ask my last question. What are you most excited about right now? We're just finishing out, the summertime. We're now into September. What are you most excited about, and what's getting you going every week?
Well, I mean, I'm most excited about excited about launching our new fund next year, and just kind of continuing to pound the pavement. And we have some cool like events coming up. We have a nice Halloween startup mixer and networking mixer and startup pitch coming October 24th in DTLA. And we have some fun stuff to kind of like end out the year and just really push forward for this new year, which is really exciting, and really happy with the team that we put together, and just really excited for 2020.
So Brandon, if any of our listeners or viewers wanted to connect with you, learn more about LvlUp Ventures, or just stay in touch with you, what would be the best place on the socials to reach you?
So until we actually push everything out for LvlUp tomorrow, anybody can go to the current site, and it'll still redirect afterwards to westwave.ventures. And if you want to get in contact with me, just go to the contact us and go through info. I'll see your message, and I'm happy to connect with anybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Brandon from LvlUp Ventures. I'm your host, Sean Goldfaden from Coefficient Labs. This is Demo Day. Thank you.
Many entrepreneurs try to bifurcate their selves. There's two selves. There's the entrepreneurial self and there's the personal self, and there's not room for the two of them to coexist.